Welcome to another show, of Hutch on Hunting. And this is your host, Bruce Hutchin, otherwise known as Hutch. And I'm heading to Oklahoma, and I'm really excited to have Bethany Beathard on because a good friend of mine, Kevin Paulson, who's on the board of directors for POMA, is mentoring her. And so we'll get into all that on the show. So, Bethany, welcome to the show today.
Thank you for having me on.
And folks, later on in YouTube, you'll be able to see her Osceola turkey so that she just shot. So I'm just going to take off right there. Tell us about that turkey hunt.
Yeah, so I'm a military wife, and I started working with Valen Honor Outdoors, and they do hunts not only for military but also their families and their kids. And so they asked me if I wanted to come out, try to get it arranged. So we went out to Florida, and I go out there. And I was, which is great. But they were not paying attention to what we were doing. So we kind of watched them roost. And then the next morning, we end up going to um, getting out there early, and we see them come off the roost and they work their way behind us. And I was like, oh man, like, I don't know. This might not happen. I might not get it, because they were just not interested in our decoys and stuff. And then we moved positions and we put our decoy right in kind of like this road access that they were kind of working between the front and the back of the property. And yeah, they spotted our decoy immediately. We're like on it. Well, I didn't know they were coming. They came in silent, and that's a little bit different than hunting Rios here in Oklahoma. They're loud usually, and Osceolas were loud in the morning and then like nothing. Um, and so, yeah, they came in, and I was there with Shane Martinez and Tiffany Saunier, and she was like, hey, Shane said to the right. And so I was like, oh, and he's behind me. So I'm thinking to the right where I'm facing, no, directly to the right. And there's 10 Jakes like right there. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And two Longbeards came in, and I just had to wait slowly. I didn't want to rush my shot, and I can't, like, I think that I've been in situations enough. Those are those times in the fields where you're like, man, I should have done this. I should have done this. And so I was like, I'm going to take my time. The shot's going to be there. So if you watch the video, the suspense is kind of like, is she going to take the shot or not? But I just slowly maneuvered and waited for the perfect opportunity. And yeah, I ended up harvesting a really nice long beard. And it was, I mean, I just will never forget the hunt. It was great, great opportunity.
Good for you. So are you going to write that up and submit that? Because you are, a content creator in the
Yeah.
outdoor industry.
Yeah, I actually have I normally write a regular column for Everest Outdoor News, and they've already asked me for the story, and so I'll probably post it on there.
That's that's wonderful. So you said you're a military wife. Is your husband still
Mhm.
in the service?
He is 7 years left. He's been in for 13 years, and so our journey started in the Marine Corps, and now he's in the Army.
He's in the army. Now, is he
Hmm.
enlisted or is he a
He's a warrant
officer?
officer. Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So he started in the Marine Corps. He was enlisted, and then it's an inter-service transfer program, and he put in a package, got selected, and now he's a warrant officer, and he works on maintenance equipment or I guess he's in charge of it now in the Army.
That's great. And you told me in the warm up that you had what, 3 kids or 4 kids?
Five.
Five, excuse
I
me.
have five. Yeah. Yeah, I have five kids. My oldest is 13 and my youngest is 3.
Oh my goodness. That's a
Yes.
crew.
We're busy around here. Yes.
I guess
And
you
we
are.
homeschool.
And you're
Yeah.
homeschooling them?
Yes. Yeah. They've always been homeschooled. We've always homeschooled them.
Well, my hat's off to you, Bethany.
Man, thank you.
That's pretty incredible. And doing all the things you're doing in the outdoor industry, homeschooling your kids, being a mom and being a wife, how do you find time to do everything that you do?
So I talk a lot about there's seasons of life. There was times where I didn't get to hunt as much, and that was more of an education time for me, like learning to call, learning, I picked up on a lot of other things. And I realized that there's times where you say, "Oh, I have a lot on my plate." Well, sometimes you're holding a little, dessert dish, and that's all you can have. And I'm well aware that I'm holding a turkey platter and I'm piling things on. Um, and the outdoors is a lifestyle. It's just like going to the gym or something that you make time for if you're an off-roader or, biker or something. You make time for that. So I involve my kids a lot of the time. My kids go hunting with me a lot, or we do a lot of our scouting missions with the kids and stuff. So if you make time for it, sometimes it's just like the Osceola hunt is 2 days. I don't have a lot of time to spend these long, drawn out hunts. So it's just short and sweet a lot of the time.
Running and gunning.
Yeah.
That's what
All
I
the
call it.
time.
And
Yeah.
I'm leaving the 1st of May to go up to Wisconsin. And I've got 3 days, basically 3 days to hunt, on one
Oh, wow.
farm. And then I'm going to another farm where I got to put in kill plots for the fall. So, that's my
Hmm.
10 days, that I've got to allocate, 3 days hunting and 3 days of, food plotting. And then I'm heading back to Colorado. So
Yeah.
that's how it works.
It's, it does. It is. And it just kind of prioritizing what I can make work and what I can't. Sometimes, just as a hunting mom, you just have to say no sometimes, or it's, just a lot of crunch time, a lot of pressure, I guess, to, make time for it.
Now I'm thinking, yeah, I'm going to go this way. So here you are as a woman, as a mother, as a wife. So let's talk about women in the outdoors that might be similar to you and love to hunt, but just say, I don't know how to do it. What would you give them? What advice would you give them?
Yeah, so that's probably my main focus audience is just the everyday woman because a lot of women want to get out into it. And it's just another way that we can provide food for our family. And so, as a military wife, I had moved around a lot. And I think the number one thing is finding mentorship. And, that was something that we were blessed with when we lived in Florida. We came in with the family that my husband didn't really grow up hunting. So, um, the guy kind of took my husband and we ended up buying into a lease with the family. And it was like a family thing. But when I moved to Oklahoma, I didn't have that. We're from Oklahoma, but I got involved with the Women in the Outdoors, the NWTF's Women in the Outdoors. They have a chapter, and they started holding events. And the ODWC conservation department here was holding kind of fireside chats, like Zoom meetings. And so I started attending those. Was like, and there was an all female one that was how to kill a turkey. I'm pretty sure that's what it was. And then I just started kind of getting into those. There's a lot of online groups that are that women can find mentorship and kind of how to do it. But at the end of the day, like I do a lot of solo hunting, and sometimes it just takes you getting out there and testing yourself in a way. I solo killed my first solo kill was an elk actually 3 years ago, and
In New
that was like
Mexico,
my
Colorado, or where'd you get it?
here in Oklahoma.
Okay, that
On
must have been a
the
limited tag.
It is a limited tag if you hunt the refuge. It's actually a once in a lifetime. But if you're military, you have access to the military installation has their own biologist. It's actually butts up to the refuge. It's the same herd that goes back and forth, and they do their own draw. And so I'm eligible as a spouse to enter it and multiple times. It's not a once in a lifetime thing. But if I do harvest, I have to sit out a year. But active duty can harvest every year if they get drawn.
Oh my goodness, was it cow or was it a bull?
It was a cow. Yeah, it was a cow. And then I drew a bull tag last year for archery, but I just didn't get it done. And then I didn't get drawn for the gun draw. So I'll put it again this year.
Well, yeah, just keep trying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now,
Why not? I
do
mean,
they allow veterans,
yes.
disabled
So
veterans to put in?
There's so that's something that a lot of people don't know is there's different eligibility for every military installation. So this one's really pretty regulated because of the elk herd and the refuge and all that stuff. Um, so it is retirees, 100% disabled, active duty, current DoD employees and spouses, but some bases don't require you can be a civilian, you just have to go through all of the
Right.
workup that they have. They have classes and stuff
Well,
to
what
access the
like
hunting
Fort
ranges.
Carson here, I used to hunt down there,
Hmm.
and I was a civilian. That was before I was 50% disabled.
Yeah.
Now I'm 50%, so it's a lot easier for me to get on base because the rules have changed and everything,
Hmm.
as a
Yeah, the rules
disabled veteran.
change, and um it's called iSportsman is with the system that they use, and you could get on an ice like Fort Sill iSportsman or Fort Carson iSportsman, and they'll have a regulation on there with an eligibility sheet, and you'll be able to
What's the name of
see.
that? I'm gonna write that down. iSportsman.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And then so it will just be whatever base you're at, like Fort Carson, iSportsman. And they'll have the regulations on there and you can see what the eligibility is to be able to, they'll have it's a whole 50-page memorandum here in Oklahoma on top of the state regulation
Wow.
for all those seasons. But it is a nice resource because, not every military can have private land if they weren't, if they didn't live in the state, so it is nice to be able to have that as a resource to use.
So, ladies and gentlemen, if you have served, are serving, check out iSportsman for the local
Mhm.
military base where you're at and
Yeah.
see what they provide for you.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many, Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, Fort Drum, New York. They have bear up there. I mean, there's so many opportunities and they have their own wildlife management system. So it's not with the state's tags and regulation. Like you still have to buy your state license and a state. So I buy an Oklahoma tag and
Right.
an Oklahoma and then the base permit. So there's like two that you purchase.
But you still have the opportunity, and that's what we
Yeah.
need in the hunting community is opportunity.
Yeah. And it's a lot of land that needs, conservation. It needs managed, it needs to be able to be hunted.
So again, let's get back to the woman's in the outdoor.
Mhm.
Your recommendations to ladies who are listening to the show, if they want to get into the writing end of it, freelance writer.
Yes. So I started kind of just sharing my journey as, a hunter, and I actually joined a group called Real Camo Girls. And they were asking for some ladies to just kind of write some articles for their blog. And I even have a blog that I let women write for, Wild and Gathered. And I just kind of started doing that and getting mentorship from the lady that was running it. She used to be an editor, and I ended up writing like a really long article, and she was like, this is more than what we need for the blog. Like I have somebody that I'm going to send this to. And I was like, okay. And it happened to be Kevin Polson. And she was like, I'm going to hook you up with somebody that could really help you. And yeah, mentorship, even like I'm probably going to sound like a broken record, but being vulnerable and putting yourself out there to learn from other people. And Kevin has been great. Um, Tough love sometimes, like, hey, no, this needs to be this. Hey, no, this, critiquing, but really has grown me as a writer to where, I mean, now I'm writing for NWTF Turkey Call, Field and Stream, and all these places that like I would have never thought, and it's all because somebody invested the time in me when I first started getting into it. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of free time, putting time in as far as, blogs and writing articles for free, reader's choice. A lot of people have like reader's choice submissions. And then eventually it turns into, you get a break.
And it does take work, folks. I
Yeah.
remember when I was writing for Go Hunt when they first getting started, and the editor there, he sent me a book, Associated Press writing guide. And he says, you know, you can write, but you can't write.
Yeah.
So I'd send a 2,000 word, profile, big game profile to him, and he'd send me back more critique, if we want to call it that, than the actual
Yeah.
article. And
Yeah.
there were a couple of times I went, I can't do this.
Hmm.
I just can't do it. And I was getting paid. So I said, well, if they're paying you, you better do it to their pro forma or format, or you can't
Yeah.
do it. So I had to learn. And it was hard, but I did it. And I ended up writing over 200 big game profiles for Colorado. Um,
Wow.
and so that was a lot of work. But once you get the template down, the format down, it was easy because I've been here since 85. So it wasn't hard. I had the content. I just had to get a pen to paper or, keyboard to
Hmm.
paper. But it does take work, and you have to be willing to be coached, mentored, critiqued, whatever you got to be thick skinned, because if you're going to
Yes.
throw a hussy fit, if lack of a better word, then don't even try to
Yeah.
stop,
Yeah.
because you can't. Kevin, one, I know him very well. He won't waste time with you unless you want to invest in yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And it really grows you as a person. And I really appreciated that because I didn't want to waste my time either. Like I'm a mom, I'm busy, I got a lot of things too. And so if I'm going off on, something that, wasn't accurate, that was a waste of my time at the end of the day too. So it's been really helpful. He's really helped me out. And I think that getting into just the outdoor industry, it's kind of the landscape has kind of changed because so much online publications, there's so much out there, and being able to really market yourself as a freelancer. So I also do content creation at the same time. I work with several brands and sponsorships, and I really, for me, I want people to know that I'm actually out there doing it. I actually use the products. I actually know what I'm talking about, because at the end of the day, if you have to be able to show that. And I also don't like to talk about just hunting because that's just like a small piece of what you're doing. It's a beginning the end model for me. So it starts with, my why, my hunting heritage, my kids, my why I'm feeding my family, going and scouting the gear. The hunt is a piece, and then conservation and eating it and preserving it and all the things that you can do to after the hunt as well, not only to honor the animal but to consume it and eat it. So yeah, it's important to show that. And you might, well, I don't really get to do a lot of hunts because when I first started writing, I wasn't doing as many hunts as I'm doing now. But my husband was hunting a lot, and I was cooking the meal, so that was like a big part of what I could share. So don't limit yourself to just going on a hunt and the hunt part of it. There's so much other things that you could go into and talk about.
Because it is a lifestyle, folks.
Hmm.
Pulling the trigger, I always tell people, pulling the trigger depends on what rifle, from 2 pounds to 3.5 pounds of pressure. That's it.
Hmm.
And I typically don't shoot multiple times. When my crossbow, I
Yeah.
only shoot once.
Yeah.
That's it. And that last crossbow goes 308 feet per second. So less than a second, that's
Yeah.
over. But some of my fondest memories, whether up in Alaska or Quebec, Canada, hunting and fishing, uh, caribous and brook trout, is the people that you meet along the way, the fellow
Hmm.
hunters or fishermen, or the First Nation people, the Inuits, and just the people you meet while you're traveling at a coffee shop.
Hmm. Yeah.
The
I mean,
locals.
me and my it's so much like the relationships around hunting has been, you know, it's like amazing. And the journey of the hunt. I hunted this last weekend with my son. He got drawn for turkey on post. And there were so many close calls and we ended up not getting one. And uh but he told me at the first day we didn't get one. And we had a lot of like pretty close, but it's hard with a 10-year-old to be quiet and get to run and gun. But he said, I'm glad I didn't get one today because I wanted to got this whole adventure. And so it was just fun. Like that's what I love about it is, of course, like you feel accomplished when the kill happens, but man, I wanted to got all those experiences with him if we would have got it the first day.
That's true. That's very true. When you think about your upbringing, how did your hunting heritage got imprinted on you?
Yeah, so um man, I grew up with a really rich hunting heritage. My great great grandpa, we have pictures of him with his name was Leonard, and they lived in southern Arizona, and he was actually a part of the predator conservation program for jaguars in Mexico, and would trap the jaguars. So we have a lot of jaguar trapping pictures, and he ran dogs. Well, then my great grandpa went into deep sea fishing. I actually just got a box of lures. I've been meaning to make a video of it, of wooden old deep sea fishing lures that my mom gave me that were my great grandpa's.
And you have them?
And
I hope you still have
I
them.
have, I do have them. They're in my attic. She just gave it to me and I just set them up there. I was like, oh, I need to make a video to show people
Oh
these.
my goodness, you got to tell the story. I mean,
Yeah,
those are
I don't, well,
heirlooms.
yes. And she still has his reel and a map with his plotting points on it.
Oh my
And
goodness, that's a book.
I know. And I was like, so then my grandpa was a big game hunter. His goal was to shoot the top 10 big game in America at the time with a muzzleloader. He was a muzzleloader hunter. And he actually has 4 Boone and Crockett records. And so he was race hunting. Well, guess what? He only had 3 girls. But to him, it was such a rich legacy that was passed down. He didn't want to lose it. So he taught his girls how to hunt, and then that led into me as a kid. Every time my grandpa would visit, it was like, what is he going to bring in the cooler? I mean, he would bring, because it was just him and my grandma. So he'd bring a cooler full of moose or elk or whatever he had. And every time he came, we would go hunt rabbits. And so I really didn't get taken hunting growing up very often. I only went a couple times with my dad. And but as I got, I grew up on 55 acres. So predator control was always a thing. I really grew up a marksman because we could shoot whenever we wanted. We had a skeet shoot on our property. We could take the 22s and the BB guns anytime. And so we shot a lot. I grew up like the can on the fence post type shooting, but uh I grew up doing that. So when I got to be an adult, I was like, man, this is something that I want to do. And I want to make sure that my kids, like the hunting heritage doesn't die with me, like I let it go. So I started getting, then I was like, man, I really like doing this. I would love to make it, into like some type of career. And then, now I feel accomplished because my 10 and 8-year-old shot their first duck this year. And I'm like, okay, so like now I've passed it on and they're doing that. So yeah, my heritage heavily influences me. I love the American hunting heritage in general. It's the fabric of our nation, and I think that it's something that a lot of people have lost the heritage connection to. I have that, and so those pictures to me, me adding my picture to the turkey pictures for all the families is like a trophy. Like, man, I've made it. When my grandpa passed away, we didn't get a lot of money, but we got a lot of taxidermy and guns and just old stuff. And you know I'm hold up a trapping anchor from my great great grandpa. I have a picture of it. I'm holding it, and somebody probably just be like, "Oh, that just looks like a piece of wrought iron." With he had uh, welded 2 horseshoes to the end, and that was his trapping anchor. And somebody probably just be like, "Oh, that's some junk." But to me, I'm like, "Man, he used to feed his 9 kids with this, or whatever." So yeah, it's just amazing going back and seeing that. So I think getting back to the heritage, sparking that up for people and, letting them start their own, that might be able to be something that we could bridge the gap between some of the anti-hunters, even though that they might not hunt, their generations ago did. And that's something that's just intertwined with the fabric of the United States and how, even beyond that in ancient times. But yeah, so it's definitely heavily influenced how I've kind of the path that I've taken in the outdoors.
So you mentioned about the hunting heritage, and
Mm-hmm.
here in the United States, in North America, we have something
Mm-hmm.
called the North American model of wildlife conservation. And in
Mm-hmm.
Colorado right now, that's under assault by radicals, anti-hunters, or people that just don't want us to hunt anything.
Mm-hmm.
And we're up against it. So a good friend of mine, uh, Dan Gates, is heading up Save the Hunt Colorado. So folks, just Google that and go to that if you can share $5, because in November, the people of the state are going to vote whether I have the right to hunt cats in Colorado.
Yeah.
And the thing about that is people who vote are not professional wildlife managers. They're emotional about an issue that they really don't know anything about. And there might be a few of you who actually spend the time, do the reading, find out about the 7 tenets of the North American model, and spend time discussing issues with CPW, Colorado Parks and Wildlife. But they're few and far between. We lost by a few percentage points of reintroduction of wolves, and of late, you've just seen that 2 calves have been killed already by the reintroduced wolves that come from Idaho, and Idaho sent the wolves from a pack that were known killers. So go figure.
Yeah.
It's not good, folks. It's not good at all. But you have to educate yourself to the facts about wildlife management and let the professionals manage the wildlife. So my grandchildren and Bethany's grandchildren someday, right,
Yeah.
will
Yeah.
have the
Yes.
opportunity to hunt. And it's a tradition that's been here since day one, Garden of Eden,
Yeah.
where they were given dominion over everything. Man was given
Yeah.
dominion. And now this isn't really a stretch. That's being destroyed.
Yeah.
Your
And it's really
thoughts on what I
unfortunate.
just said?
Yeah, I mean, it's really unfortunate because I feel like, for me, I talk a lot about, just being like, I stay at home with my kids and being a homemaker, and this is how I choose to feed my family. This is a way that I choose to, bring my kids up. And, you know, wildlife conservation, we're seeing like, the grizzlies, like that's a big issue up north, and stuff. And even in California, they took away hunting cats, but now the wildlife biologists have to kill them because there's no hunters coming into doing it. So now the tax dollars are funding it versus hunters paying to do it and bringing that revenue into the state. And so
Can
I don't
I
feel like people
inter
really,
can I interject?
yeah,
The state wildlife DNR in California are killing more cats than a hunter ever killed. They're
yeah,
exceeding what the limits were for when they sold licenses to generate revenue, and they are now killing more mountain lions than hunters ever did.
yeah,
If
yeah.
that's
And
not ludicrous or idiotic, or I'd throw an adjective on that, it just doesn't
yeah,
make sense when you can generate revenue by letting hunters hunt the cats and help manage them.
yeah. And we've seen where they've, not allowed hunters to hunt, kaibab with the mule deer is another conservation story where they, pulled the hunters out of there and then there was just too many deer and then the deer, the habitat loss and competing and stuff. So, you know, I think there's a lot more that goes into it as if you're a person that's an anti-hunter to educate yourself on, hunting is at the end of the day, hunting is really the most ethical death that the animal is going to get, whenever we say we're harming animals really, and you think about introducing wolves and what they do to it, um, but yeah, I really think, bringing awareness to education, and and being an ethical hunter. I think the landscape of social media has really changed, I think, what is in people's face about what hunting looks like. And there's a lot of grip and grin trophy photos, and I'm the first one to post it because I love the accomplishment. But I think we also need to back that up with you know taking the kids out, showing, just scouting pictures of the animals thriving in the off season, and eating them and preparing it, and the full kind of the full circle, and not just like picture after picture of grip and grin, grip and grin, grip and grin, and then like no in between. Like, um, I feel like that is something that, I have a lot of hunting photos from my family for years. I mean, it amazes me because my great great grandpa was a farmhand with 9 kids. They lived on a farm. They lived on a ranch, 3 Point Ranch in southern Arizona. They did not have a lot of money. You could tell by the background, but they had enough money for film to take the pictures of what they were doing. And I mean, just I have a picture. I love it that they sent. I don't even know who everybody is in the picture. There's probably about 10 hunters. They all have coos deer like hog tied by the feet that they had harvested. It was like coming back from deer camp, and they have them over their shoulder. And somebody took a picture of them walking off, and they all have deer on their shoulder, just one. And but there's just so many other pictures of just life, and that was just a part of what they did. And hunting was something that they were proud of. And I mean, the reason why they did the so many jaguar conservation was because the jaguars were killing the livestock and villagers, and they live so close to the border. He was hired to trap for them. And so now we see the jaguars are now coming back in the United States because they were killed almost to extinction. And so it's just a neat to kind of see the full circle moment of, well, now they're bringing them back. And, it's, I don't know, it's just like my heritage is still going on. Like eventually somebody maybe will be able to trap them again.
Yes, your heritage is growing. So what do
Yeah.
your kids think about? You just said your son went to the base
Mhm.
and you didn't get a turkey,
Mhm.
but what does he think about hunting? What's his take of it?
Yeah, so all my kids kind of have taken a different route, and I just read an article for the NWTF that said, not every kid will be a hunter, but everyone should be a conservationist. And I at least want my kids to know this skill so they can feed themselves if need be. But I recognize that maybe not all of them will pursue it. So my oldest has autism, so he's really not, as we take it, he likes to go, but he's more like, let's go scout. I'd rather fill a feeder. I'd rather cut some lanes, those kind of things. My 10-year-old, he's going to be a mountain man one day. He traps. He's hunted his first. We went duck hunting this year, so he's done that. He's went with me several times, but this time he got hands on a gun and got his first bird. And he's went turkey hunting. Hopefully, he'll be successful later this season. And yeah, he loves it, and he wants to do it. Like he is willing to get up early and go. And my daughter, who's 8, is the same way. I've probably taken her out. I mean, if the availability is for me to take her, she wants to go. Um, and so I kind of balance the time between the kids I'm taking and it's time for me. And but I like I said, I wasn't taken very many times as a kid, and I want my kids to be able to go more times than they can count. And my 6-year-old is starting to get interest to go. And so she's like, well, I haven't went hunting yet, and I want to go. So she's starting to kind of want to do what the older kids are doing. And then, my 3-year-old, he's just wild. But they all come after the animal comes back, and they want to see it, they want to touch it, they want to help and do all the things. So they love whenever you bring a turkey back and kind of looking at it, and just, they're amazed, and they love that.
How do you train them to shoot?
So that's something that um I really like, because I feel like that's something where we went wrong in America, is now like guns are, definitely the bad guy, but in the gun owner's home, kids should have access to guns that are for them. So all of my kids have their own BB guns, hunting style, AR platform, and airsoft pistol. And my parents have 55 acres. We have a little range right there. And so, Ear Pro, Eye Pro, they just get used to, like, they're not allowed to shoot if they don't have it. And so they all have their own stuff and they're able to go out there and shoot and target practice and give them the fundamentals early. It helps them. My husband's been in the military, so he can really help them. Even my 3-year-old can recite the treat, never, keep gun rules, and he just goes around saying that. And so that's something that I quiz him all the time. I'm like, because I can still carry all the time, and they know that guns are available. We keep all of our guns locked up in the house, but they are not scared of them. I don't want them to be scared. I want them to know it's a tool that we don't play with. And yeah, so we go out and shoot. I don't want the first time that they've ever shot to be in the field. So I make it a point to, my parents have a skeet shoot. So a couple of them have shot shotguns out there, and I'm a crossbow hunter. And so a couple of them have done crossbow. And so yeah, just introducing them to guns that are their size first, as like BB guns, pellets, airsoft, is kind of takes like the scary, I guess, aspect out of introducing kids to guns, and then letting them work up from there. And I think my oldest, who's 10, has shot, a 12 gauge and 20 gauge and um a 6.5 Creedmoor, and just introducing them as they grow to what they're capable of shooting, and just keep those safety rules at the forefront. You should have my kids might be smart with the gun, but I don't know who they're going to be around that might come around one. And then I want them to be able to, like, what do you do if, you guys find a gun and the kid that you're with thinks it's fun, to play with it or something. And it's kind of scenarios, just like you would do if there was a fire in the house or, an active intruder and things like that. I do a lot about, moms being prepared and not being scared to go out in the world, arm yourself, not just with guns, but other non-lethal forms. And yeah, I think that's building an environment around that, showing kids that they can protect themselves and feed themselves with firearms. And it can be used for sport too. You know, I tell my son all the time, hey, get into shooting sports. It could take you to college.
Yes, they will. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you're an amazing young lady.
Thank
And
you.
you've just begun, as that song says, you've only just begun. So what's next?
Well, I am currently still like knee deep in turkey season. I have a hunt next week in North Carolina for Eastern. Um, will the Grand Slam happen in 1 year? I don't know. I have some availability to I've right now I currently have all the hunts almost locked in to do a Grand Slam in a year. They're all like 1-2 day hunts. Um, we'll see if it'll happen. But yeah, just continue writing, sharing my story. I've just partnered with the National Bow Hunter Education Foundation as a education advocate. And, really that's kind of like the route that I've taken, is just like education, bringing kids in and, sharing the love of it. I'm a mom just like everybody else, like I'm an everyday woman. I don't, you know, I think a lot of people are past like the paid model. They just want somebody that can relate to them, that knows like, hey, I'm going turkey hunting on Saturday, but I have, ball practice 3 times this week, and I have church and, fried tumbling practice and everything else. And it's a hard thing to do, but it's something that I love and something that I care about. So you make time for it.
That's great. Well, Bethany, it's just been a pleasure to have you on Hutch and Honey today and share, your journey. And I don't think this is the last time you've been on the show. So on behalf of, excuse me, Hutch and
Bless you.
Hunting, thank you so much. And I want to see that slam getting done this year.
I'm hoping so. Thank you for having me on. And if I get it, I'll definitely be posting about it. And man, I'm excited. I'm hoping that it gets done. There's a lot of things in the meantime, but for sure the Eastern's next week. So I'm headed to North Carolina.
All right, get her done, lady.